welcome everybody. Very happy to have everybody here. We have a fantastic group of speakers. We have Geer, Dion, Johnstone, Bethany, Jillard, and Caroline Bicks. It's an incredible group, so you'll have a very good time this morning.
Yeah, in the morning.
Just a couple of announcements. The event is being live streamed, as you can see, and we'll have some time for question and answers. So they'll bring you a mic because we want to make sure that everybody can hear what you're asking. So it's going to be, we're not going to have a lot of time, I'm afraid, for question and answers, but we'll try to do our best. And I want to start by thanking Dr. Jules and Josephine Harris who make this event possible. This is our second year. And thanks to their support, we can make the event free, which is a very nice thing to do. So the symposium is going to be over at 12. If you have time afterwards, I would invite you to go see our exhibition. We have a small museum space across from the Abbey Theater, and we have an exhibition dedicated to the 4 Shakespeare plays in the playbill, and there is a lot about Othello. So I hope you'll have a chance to go see it, and we're open until 6 o'clock today. So I'm done with the basic announcements. I want to start by introducing Geer, who's been coming, who just came there. Ellen just flew in a couple days ago from Los Angeles, and she has been the artistic director of the Theatricum Botanicum since 1978. If you're not familiar with the Theatricum Botanicum, it was founded by her father, Will Geer, and is now 40 years old, although it started a bit earlier in terms of...
Grandpa Walton.
Grandpa Walton, yes. Mostly known as that. And the Theatricum is a fantastic space. It's an outdoor Shakespeare theater, and Will was also a botanist, so he planted a garden with all the plants that are mentioned in the Shakespeare plays and with quotes that relate to the plant and how it's mentioned in the play. So there's different components to the theater. It's a magical space. I saw, several years ago, I saw a Midsummer Night's Dream there, and it really made sense in that setting. You have these big trees and the mountains, is in the Topanga, and it's really a great space. And a lot like our thrust stage at the Festival Theater, that takes you to the essence of acting and the essence of theater. The same with their space. It really makes you concentrate on the actors and the play and the words. And it's just a great experience. So if anybody has not been there, you should. And they have a very strong educational component at the Theatricum. They have all kinds of programs for schools. They have an academy for actors. They started the Academy of the Classics in the late 70s. For the same reason, we started the Birmingham Conservatory here to get actors to read the classics and learn more about how to pronounce everything.
And speak better.
Right. Practical reason. And they also do a lot, as I said, a lot of educational programs with the schools in Los Angeles and in other areas. So there are a lot of similarities with our theaters. So it's just really great space. And also you do something I really like. You have workshops for kids, and then you put them on stage on the regular plays.
Yes.
So that's just a great theater. Ellen is a fantastic actress. Probably most of you know her work. She's been on TV and theater. She's worked with everybody, and she's an incredible actress. If you have seen the movie Harold and Maude from 1971, she has a good part there. And she started as Ophelia in the early 60s. She's been Desdemona in 1962.
First Fairy a lot.
Yes, First Fairy was your first part. And another connection with our theater is that Ellen worked with Tyrone Guthrie at the Guthrie Theater when he started. So that's when you started as Ophelia and the opening performance there. So she worked with Tanya Moisevich and Tyrone Guthrie, so she has lots of stories that we can share because we kind of were born because of the same people. So it's a big connection there. And Ellen is also a playwright. She has a play called Merlin that just started, and she's again, director, actor, playwright, educator. And she directed Othello in 2005.
And a mother of three.
And a mother of three, which is
Two
not a small
grandchildren.
feat.
3 grandchildren.
And not only your mother of three, but you work with your daughter, Willow. Yeah. Willow is works a lot with Ellen, and you also manage the theater with your sister, so it's a bit of a family affair. Anyway, Ellen is going to talk about her take on Othello and the characters and her approach to directing, and then many other things. So welcome, Ellen.
Yes, Thank you so much for coming, and I'm really honored to have been invited to this wonderful forum. I'm so impressed with the space here, how you treat your actors, that repertory exists so strongly up here, and it exists because people like you back it. You come, you make it, and now the whole educational part of it it's just wonderful. You should be very proud. When I think when we started our theater, you know, it was on the dirt, it was in the mud, and we would rehearse Romeo and Juliet, and we'd have to wear boots because it was muddy, you know, and you know, we have rattlesnakes and we have lizards and owls, and it's very different, you know. This you're safe. We were rehearsing just a while back, Merlin actually, and suddenly I heard this noise going on up behind us, because we have seats like this that go up in the back, and we're under the California live oaks. And I suddenly turned around, and then there's 2 deer, but there was the daddy deer and the baby deer, and they were being chased by the neighborhood dogs, and they came roaring over the top and down, you know, and things like that happen. Merchant of Venice, we had somebody had doves, white doves, white doves.
We have critics here.
Well, okay, no, but you know, then you should learn from Douglas Campbell, who helped start this place. He told me when I first met him, never read critics, don't pay any attention. You know what's going on inside you, and you know what you're doing. And that was the biggest gift, because I was always trying to please as an actor, you know. And so now I don't pay much attention to them. I know it helps fill the houses, because a lot of people do read critics. But we're supposed to be talking about Othello.
And Ellen made a good remark about our title. She said we left out Desdemona.
You left out Desdemona.
It's my fault. I came up with the title.
There wouldn't be you if there wasn't a woman named Desdemona. There would be no reason to write the play. The way it's written, to me, it's it hits you so hard. It's the deepest love story to me. It's about love and what can happen. You know, I always think of, when I directed it, you know, usually women don't direct it. Well, it's about 2 men. It's always 2 men. No, it's a love story. And when I directed it, I had James Avery and my daughter Willow, who was a young actress. And James Avery had held Willow as a baby when he first began working with us in Romeo and Juliet, when I had the baby. So there was a lot of stuff in there, you know, of an older man and a young, beautiful girl who, to me, Othello is a warrior. He knows how to kill. His love life has probably been in the camps where you'd have prostitutes, because you didn't have time when you're a warrior to have deep relationships. You're always going to the next war. It's hard if you don't feel this way. I'm just telling you how I approached it. And he's a beautiful man. And he's a man who's a leader. And to become a leader in military is quite something, isn't it? I mean, to become a leader anywhere is quite something. Leaders never know how they really got there unless they're Iago types. You know, and get there that way by crushing people as they go. And so this beautiful girl, she's young, you know, and she's a woman in the times where women are not free to make choices. Daddy does it. For her, and she falls in love with this man, this beautiful man, and this man for the first time falls in love. I mean, even to fall in love when you're older, it's going to cause problems, because if you haven't fallen in love before, there's a passion that you're not used to, and you're older. And so that's very exciting. I don't know about you, but for an Othello to play, it's just thrilling. You know, it's almost like, what am I, 16? I love this woman. I can't keep my hands off her. She's so beautiful, and she listens to me. She cares about who I am. She cares about my stories. She sits on my lap. She lets me rock her. All these feelings of humanity and being a human have come to him. And that's why I think it's a love story. And as they haven't had that much time together, they have the courage, the guts. She's got the guts to say, I'm sorry, Dad. It's almost like the Cordelia thing, you know, Dad, I love you, but I'm going to marry now. I'm going to love him probably more in a different way. And so she does that, and they decide to elope, which is huge for a great leader of army men and people to take that step and not be afraid that he's going to be, you know, crushed or banished because of it. He knows deep in his heart he won't, because he's important to the society. And so then suddenly they're isolated on this island, and a man who
loves, who's kind.
He's a man, you know, who has no heart. He doesn't know how to love. You know, and it's sad, because I always think, you know, Shakespeare's plays always start with the back history. What the heck goes on? I mean, the play starts like that. Rodrigo, you know, you're fooling around with his mind and his poor dumb mind. You're fooling around with it, and you see an opportunity to, oh yeah, they elope, what kind of business? So right away it starts. So what happened prior, you know, for this man, you know, who knows? But he's a military man. He's awful to his wife, you know. He uses people to get ahead, because he's a man who will never get ahead, you know. And then we have them in our society now, right? And that's one of the reasons this story is so wonderful, because by the end, I don't know about you, but I'm gasping in pain for these two people, and I'm also thinking about that. God, nobody ever took care of this man. Nobody ever helped him. Nobody ever slapped him and said no, you know. And that, and of course, people will think, well, he's so gullible. You know. No, he's in love. And when you're in love, you don't see many things, you know, until later. Time, relationship, time, right, Mr. Harris? Time. Takes time to really know each other. So that's the way I approached it. And it was a little bit hard, of course, for the gentlemen callers in the cast. But I think that they got going with it, they got excited by it, and they started talking out of their hearts and not out of their heads. And how we work there, because it's very hard. We only have 5 hours in a rehearsal day. Tell me if I want them to stop. Just
no, you have plenty of time.
Okay. We only have 5 hours in a day because you work outside. And when you work outside, it's exhausting. It's not like being in an environment like this. And so it's very intense work. You have a couple of 10-minute breaks, and you just work. And you work on your feet. I learned about that from the man who started your theaters here, Tyrone Guthrie, who I love deeply. Douglas Campbell was my mentor. He's the one who hired me. Guthrie was too busy doing something else. But then we ended up just adoring each other. He used to call me Billy Goat and correct my language. But with Douglas, it was in New York, and he had me come in, and I did my audition. I had been working in San Diego doing Desdemona, and I'd been working a lot. And this was a very important thing to do, you know, to be even asked to audition, because they were going to start a theater in Minneapolis. I call it Minneapolis. Minneapolis, and he hired me, and Guthrie liked me, and we started a theater, just like you had your theater starting here. Our first day was he put all the is this interesting? Okay. We had he put all the actors in a circle, our backs. Now, we're here, we got Jessica Tandy there, and Hugh Cronin, you know, and you have Dr. Guthrie, and, you know, you're 19 and thinking, how did I ever get here, you know? And so you're in a circle, and he hands all of us some Greek chorus work. And that's how we met each other, with our backs to each other, reading Greek chorus, tuning up together. And I was just, I love this, ooh. And then we go to the first rehearsal. Sure, we're going to be fired, you know, because we're Americans, and Americans don't know how to do Shakespeare, you know. And these are these wonderful English and Canadian people coming, and they're going to tell us how. It's all that feeling, you know, Americans get that way about the classics. And so right away, he's sitting there, we're all sitting there, you know, with our books, and I'm thinking, oh, we're going to have a nice table read. Isn't that what they do? Yeah, a table read. And Guthrie says, oh, no, let's not do that. Let's not do it. Here, ooh, I love the ghost. Come on, Ken Rutabaga, get up there. Here we go. You got to do the ghost. And we're all there. And he's blocking it. Right away. And I learned something about that was precious for me as an actor. I don't know how the rest of you are. But as an actor, if people talk too much, I become like a statue of stone. And everything stops in my mind, and I feel like I can't do it. And so it was like being released by these people. And in Americans, you know, you've got the Methodists, and you've got Sadie Miser, you've got all these kinds of acting that you're supposed to do. But I came out of put your back against the wall, and you get a crowd enough big around to hire you, then you're an actor, you know. That's really from Woody. That's from Woody Guthrie. That's how he got started. That's the way he played, learned how to play, right? Yeah. So it's a different. Maybe that sounds funny to you and to you because you're in an atmosphere that is. Oh, I mean, I loved working at the Guthrie. You know, the vomitories, and you had the costumers, and Tanya Mosevich, who asked me, is that all right? Does that feel right? Instead of just plastering something on you. I'd never been treated in that fashion, with that care, because the care that you give for your actors, oh, I love it. It's so beautiful, because when you work in American theater, it's summer stock, it's different. It's different there. So with their blessings, that's what I tried to do at our theater, without the financial, without any support at all. And in a, a film town, you know, and everybody wants to become big and famous, you know, like Iago here. They want, not you personally.
No, I'm not famous. No.
But you know, that's your actor. So my sister and I got together, and we said, okay, let's audition. And here we are in the dirt with the California live oaks over our head. The canopy's beautiful. You have to really know how to use your voice, or you're going to lose it. And we started to audition, and people couldn't talk. They didn't know operative words. They didn't know how to do rhetoric. They didn't know the art of the classics. You know, the techniques. It's a technique. That's all it is. Techniques. What do you do in order to be able to do these great Shaw, all of them? So we. At that point, started an academy. It was actually in Denny's, which is it. And we sat down, and we, you know, well, they can't do that. No, but they have to move first. Well, let's get the voice going. So we created something called the Intensive Shakespeare Seminar, that within 5 weeks you could at least get the techniques that are needed in order to do these great works. Doesn't mean you're going to suddenly become a classical actor, but you're going to find the things that you need to work on, and you go out and find teachers and do that. And then we started to extend it. So now it's quite big, our academy. And then the other thing was the schools. Douglas, again, my mentor, always said, you've got to get the young people in. How are you going to get the next generation? So we started something called the school days. Am I at 30 minutes yet?
No, you have another 20 minutes.
What do you okay.
But I will ask you more questions.
Yeah, and any time, pop in and ask a question. And so we started, and this was our inaugural program was school days. And we got $1,000 from ARCO. You know, we were very excited about that. We got $5,000 from Wells Fargo Bank. We wore purple. We went into the boardroom. Purple is a money color. And they came out and they looked at us and they saw the hawks and they got excited. They got excited about what we were trying to do. And we had this great passion. And in Malibu down the way was John Houseman, who was a great friend of the family's. Should I go into that? The family were very political. Our family. My father was one of the great to me, one of the great Americans. I didn't ever really know him as a father, you know, the kind that pats you on the knees. That's a wonderful thing. No. You know, he would take me to a rally and say, just take the banjo, sing the song. We're doing fine. We're going to do this, we're going to do this now, okay? And he said, oh yeah, that's Pete Seeger. Here, he'll teach you a couple chords. It's that kind of background, you know, and so, but it was a beautiful family. It was like a heart. It was a beautiful family. We loved each other so much. And then there was something in our country, I don't know if you've had it in your country, called the Blacklist, House of Un-American Activities Committee. Does anybody not know what that was? Well, it was a deep scar. It was a deep scar for our country. But it also needs to be remembered and known about it because it could happen again at any time when there's people like that, you know.
The character.
And so what it did, it was so powerful that it totally shattered our beautiful heart. And we all split up, you know. We were living in parks. We learned how to steal food very well. I wrote a play about it. It's called When the Dark Cloud Comes. And these were people who went through this. It was a terrible period of time in our country. And so then suddenly, 10 years later, my darling father got the Waltons, right? So he's bad. He's a bad man, you know, take him. And 10 years later, he becomes the apple pie of America. You know, that's the way life is. It's the way it is. So we decided, and we had been I've been doing the Guthrie Theater and the San Diego Rep, and just all over learning about theater. And so we came back to Topanga, and it became a place of healing. We healed as a family, and we were able to take all the different things that we learned and begin a theater. So it's a theater that's really based in family. And what we want to pass on, you know, we're trying to build a museum now. I have all my father's stuff, and the Library of Congress wants them, but they're still in, you know, I haven't been able to give them up because I want to be able to share them with the people, you know, of California who come to our theater. So there's lots to do. It's very exciting. I have a beautiful family I'm trying to pass on the leadership. I'm getting tired. And I have family members who want to carry it on. My son does all the graphics. He understands the heart of the plays. My daughter is turning into a superb actress, all on her own. She's just beautiful. And then she went to UCLA, and she took a funding course because she said, Mom, we've got to do better than this. So it's going into a whole direction that is so exciting. That I do hope if any of you ever get there, you know, we do have theater in LA. and many of the kids, I can give you an example of do I need to talk more about Othello?
Yes, I'll give you one more sentence and then I'll ask you an Othello question.
No, you can go ahead and ask me.
I have to segue off your two things before you steer back.
Okay.
We're going way off the chart now, but Douglas Campbell was a huge mentor of mine.
Oh, was he?
Yes,
nice
he was,
to
and a
meet
dear
you.
friend. Nice to meet you. But when I first came to Stratford, I told this at his memorial here, actually. I wanted to be a politician. I'm segueing politics and Douglas Campbell.
Oh, yeah.
I thought I wanted to be a politician because I studied politics. And I started here doing Greek with Douglas. I did a chorus in Oedipus Rex.
Yeah.
And he insisted on having a meeting with every actor and scared the heck out of me. You know, Douglas Campbell, one-on-one, and you know, he'd sit there and says, "Why are you here, boy?" And I went on, and he said, "Well, why do you want to be an actor?" And I said, "Well, I don't know if I do, Douglas. I think I want to be a politician." And he took 1 second and he said, "Well, why would you want to do that when you can change the world on the stage and still be respected in the morning?"
That's Douglas.
Perfect.
Oh, God.
Perfect.
Yeah, he was incredible. You know, he directed me in St. Joan, and I remember going to rehearsal, and the Cassons were there. Louis Casson, Sybil Thorndike. I didn't meet them, but I saw them. And they were in the park, and they were sitting next to each other, and he had one of those horns, you know, to listen, to hear, and she was reading into the horn to him. It was so beautiful. It was just, it was so beautiful. But he would take me aside, Douglas Campbell, and have a private session. And all the rest of the cast, again, Americans not used to, "Why are you listening to what he says? Why are you copying how he says it?" Because I said, "He knows, and I don't." He would say something to me like in St. Joan, there's that speech, you'll do it one day. If ifs and ands were pots and pans, there'd be no need for tinkers, right? That's a big sentence. So I was saying, you know, if the hands and pots get pans, there'd be no. No, he said, no, Ellen. This is the way you say it. If. Oh no. Okay, all right. And I sit there and I go over it and I do it, and then I try it on the stage, and of course it didn't fit me yet. And he said, "Don't worry, none of this stuff is going to fit you. By the time you open, there, and it'll be yours." And it was. He was a gift. Tyrone Guthrie knew it. He was a gift. Question.
And he did play Othello here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Othello. So you played Desdemona at the Old Globe in San Diego. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about playing Desdemona and how does it?
Well, you got one right here.
I know.
I'm an old lady now. Desdemona, I loved playing her. It was a very complex production because there was a genius. He was a genius. Bill Ball. Do any of you know about Bill Ball, who came out of this is all American stuff, out of the Carnegie Mellon. There were two men, Bill Ball, Ellis Rabb, and Fitzgerald. And she's a woman. And you know, that's when all the nonprofits started in America, and the Lord contract we started there at the Guthrie. They each went off and did their different theaters, and learned so much for them too. But Bill Ball was an odd man. He understood how to speak the classics. He was beautifully trained, but I do think that he had winds in his head, you know, and he was playing Iago. And it was a time in America where some actors were excited about drugs, speed, something called speed. There was a Dr. Max in New York. I kept hearing about it. And he would, if your voice was bad or something, he'd give you a shot, and it turned out to be speed. Nobody knew it. Nobody knew it. The artistic community. They found out much later. This was at a time when nobody knew what it was. So that's what he would use to lower his voice for Iago. It was so surprising to me. And then of course, he found out and felt like a fool. But playing Desdemona is an extraordinary gift for any young actress, you know, to play, because her trust and her love and everything who she is, she gives to this man whom she cares so deeply about. Yes? Yes. She just loves him beyond, and that he's her home. And so, you know, you keep thinking, well, why didn't she stop him? Why couldn't they talk? They hadn't even gotten to that point in their relationship. It's a new relationship. I mean, I don't know how, the only thing about time-wise we don't know about is that trip from, you know, to Cyprus. I don't know, how long would that take, do you think?
2 weeks.
We decided.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's all we don't know
But they
about.
weren't even
And they're not
together.
They
either.
weren't together, they were separate. So they really didn't have time to make all those beautiful things that couples and marriages can make. How's that?
That's pretty good.
Do you have anything to say about it?
Well, I mean, I think you speak to it beautifully. It is a gift to play her, and to I've been so inspired by her the last couple of months, that kind of love and the kind of faith that she commits to. And
Brave.
it's so brave. It's so brave. And it's I mean, I don't know if you had the same experience, but before I do the show, it takes a certain amount of courage to be willing to open up like that again, knowing as the actor what's going to happen. And because I think, I mean, a lot of people have asked me, why? Don't you feel weak? Don't you feel like you're just being tossed around? Doesn't it bother you to be her? And it's sort of a baffling question, because on the inside she is so strong and there's so much light that I think if I could choose a way to live, I pray that I can be it.
Live or love.
Live through love the way that she did. Live with faith the way that she did. Refuse to doubt. And always choose that. But yet the I think in the protective part of my own nature, even as an actor, it's not an easy journey to go
No,
on.
you got to knock through the door.
Yeah, you just have to kind of step on stage.
Yeah.
And, and I mean, I've said this to Dion before, but we get to hear the play while it's going on through the tannoy, the sound system. And one of the great gifts for me before starting the show, one of the ways that I sort of can go in, is the first time I hear Dion speak, because he's using a dialect that's not Dion's voice, it's Othello's. And there's something about hearing that sound that just gets, and I go, okay, I know this man. I love this man.
Yeah.
And it makes the whole journey very simple, because there's no ending to that. There's going to be love and light for them forever at that point.
Yeah. Early love.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, how is it? The death scene at the end is hard. I mean, every time. So some of our actresses were talking about the experience and how hard it is every night to go through that death. And we have an interview with Martha Henry from the 1980s where she said that it's like every time she was playing Desdemona, it was like getting on a train, and every night you would hope it would get to a different destination, but it didn't. So how do you approach that? As you said, for both of you, does it come natural to get to that ending, or does it change from night to night when you play that?
Well, you have to be very careful. You have to be very careful. The Othello has to be very, very careful. It has to be worked out by the nines for safety. You're dealing with somebody's throat, and you're dealing with a man who is in a high key. And so you can't fool around, It's that way in all the fight scenes, There are some actors who we won't let fight because they cannot control. They cannot control when they get into that thing, And somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody could be killed. It's really no joke. So when you're dealing with killing somebody, and you guys do the death beautifully. You do it. You do the death really beautifully. Because in this day and age, the length of the death, it's needed. I mean, we're so jaded. 10 years ago or 20 years ago, the death could hit the bottom of your soul with just a quick death. But the way you guys did it physically is so horrifying. Really, it's just horrifying. But I think that's what the audience has to have now, in order to really deeply feel it. Because, I mean, we're a nation of yours, it's not mine. And it's this, and I look at the kids, we have long talks with the kids, their little eyes, what's happening to their eyes, why it's so important. Theater is so important, and that what you do to keep it going it's vital. It's vital for, this is going to sound funny to you, but it's true. It's vital for the humanity of who we are as people. We have to take this and make it a tool and not what's happening to kids. You know, and they love the human experience when they come to our plays. They adore it. It's so important. You know, I was watching, I can't remember which play, it was up there. And the kids were having it was Othello, wasn't it? They were having a staring contest before your play started. So the boys were in the top, and the girls, you know how they separate themselves? And so the boys were, and the girls were, it was so great. And then they're going to see this play, and it's just, you think, oh my God, you know, that's the innocence, this beautiful innocence. They're going to see the play, they're not going to do like that. When I was teaching at UCLA, I was teaching some girl, St. Joan, I said, you've got to go, you have to go to the library, UCLA library, look it up, study the period, da-da-da-da-da. She comes up to me, she says, oh, that's the courtroom, right? And there it was. There was just, you know, I mean, it's a whole different, it's so instant. It's wonderful. Question?
Yes. A couple more questions. So, do you see any redeeming part in Iago, or is just a bad man? I mean, you said something to him.
No, he's a hurt human being. He was scarred. He was scarred by life. I mean, if you really want to get into detail, you know, and Americans love to do that. I mean, when my father handed me my first Shakespeare, he said, here, Ellen, just read this and you won't ever have to have a psychiatrist. and he says, this will be your greatest love affair. And all these, this is all true. This is about human beings. And when you really think about Iago, I mean, if I ever played Iago, and look out, because we were into gender shifting, you know, all over the place down there, I mean, he was so hurt. Something must have happened to him. I don't think he got enough female, wholesome female love. And because if you don't, you get mixed up, you know. You got to have the balance of the man and the woman for the child. So, I mean, I can go into a whole theory about why he is the way he is, but poor darling, he's an adult now, and he's done it, and you can't make any excuses. There's no more excuses, you know, and we are in a time where everybody's trying to figure out, incest, that's terrible, terrible. Well, maybe if they can cure this part and that part. I'm sorry, a child has been destroyed. They've been affected for the rest of their life, so it's a quandary.
So do you think it's more, the conflict that develops is more personal, or is it about power? Does power come into the picture?
Yeah, he just wants to be, it's everything. Yeah. Poor man, he wants to be he wants to be in the position. He doesn't want to be who you are. He wants to be in the position of this man. He feels rejected, passed over, and he's a killer. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know how to kill, right?
Yes. Yeah, there's a...
okay, now we're going. Here we go. Stick up for himself.
I have an entire dissertation that will take up the afternoon. I was just going to add, there's a clip on YouTube of a lovely fellow called the Iceman. Does anyone know who this is? He was a hitman for the mob. Ooh. Killed over 200 people, I think. And there's a movie coming out about him.
I bet he got paid for it.
Well, yes, he did. But in this interview, and I don't know whether he's since been executed or he's certainly imprisoned, but he talks to a therapist, actually, in this 45-minute interview. If you want something fun to watch before you go to bed, welcome to my life, my home life. But he talks about killing like it's eating a sandwich. I mean, he doesn't... And at the end, the therapist analyzes him, which he wants. This man wants to know why, because he knows he's a monster. And the therapist talks about it being a combination of nature and nurture, that this man was born a borderline sociopath, psychopath, who has the inability to understand human suffering or compassion or love. Yeah. And he was nurtured by a horrible father who beat the heck out of him on a nightly basis. And so this therapist gives a very astute observation that this man sort of had the bad sandwich of being born with the genes, which if you're nurtured, you can find your way through life, but he wasn't nurtured and therefore became this killing monster. And it reminded me very much of what a background of Iago would be. This man, the Iceman says at the end of the interview, he said, "I never knew love, so the only thing that ever drove me in life was hate." And the therapist says, "In what way drove you?" He said, "It allowed me to put my right foot in front of my left." And it all of a sudden I'm like, that's the man we see. That's a big piece of the man we see in Othello. Somebody who just needs to keep moving forward and put their right in front of their left. But it's a fascinating.
I still don't feel sorry for you.
You will by noon. You will.
So maybe we can take maybe just one or two questions, and then we'll take a short
love
break.
questions.
So, and if we can have the mic for the audience. Need
Are there
Wayne?
questions?
Yeah, we need Wayne with the mic.
Wayne.
Oh, there's one up here.
Yeah. Can we
How's your voice?
check it? Wayne?
Me?
Yeah. So let me, while we wait for the mic, let me repeat that. Say again. Yeah. So what is Ellen's favorite role during her career?
I love them all, you know. I mean, it's such an honor to be able to get inside these people and share them with people. To share the human condition with people. You have to have a deep, deep, deep passion. I'm going to answer your question. You have to have a real deep, deep, deep passion to do this. You can't fool around. People think that it's easy. It's not. So I would think, because of my nature, who I am, I love the thing that was the hardest, and I almost didn't make it. You know, and that was Maria Callas. Because she talks about her teaching, and I didn't agree with it. I mean, I couldn't speak that way about an audience the way she would speak about the audience's insignificance. What do they know? And every night I would get to that speech, and my mind would, I couldn't find the words. It was so hard. I actually collapsed at one point. I'm not a diva. You know, I'll work in any conditions and sing a song in any place. But that person climbing into her, you know, climbing into Eleanor Roosevelt was easy, you know, easy because she was such a marvelous person. But Maria Callas, so to answer your question, my favorite thing is the hardest.
We have a question there.
I'd like to know more about the meeting at Denny's.
Are you going to start an academy?
I know nothing about it. So what were some of those classical techniques?
Oh!
So let me repeat the question. So Melora and Ellen.
No, it was my sister Kate, my older
sorry,
sister.
your sister Kate. And you devised your planning for the academy?
Yes.
At Denny's.
Yeah.
So
That sounds really tacky, doesn't
More
it?
about
Now,
that.
if the educational director heard, you know, she knows the story of the beginning, because now it's very formal, it's all done the way you're supposed to do things, and it's glorious. At Denny's, we sat down and said, well, we can't hear anybody. All right, so we have to have vocal. We'll have vocal, and we'll meet 3 times a week. We'll have vocal, all right? And then they don't know about operative words. They don't know how to win an argument, rhetoric. They don't know how to move. They don't know how to study the lines. I mean, the simple thing, it's like learning music, you know. Some people, it's very hard to learn lines. And we have a family habit, and lots of people don't do what we do, but I can't learn lines unless I'm walking around, unless it's connected to my body. I can't sit and do this like most people can do this. You know, it doesn't go in. So we talk about how you learn lines. We talk about, it's not a basic acting, it's all just the classics that we feel are, the techniques that we feel are needed to have a person able to stand up there and do the classics, including Shaw, including Ibsen, including Tennessee Williams, our baby. Beautiful language, has to be very carefully taken care of, technique-wise. You can't just mumble-jumble them. So, did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
we have one more here. Yeah.
I'd like to hear a little
Oh yeah, no, we'll go into
you're gonna hear.
Othello. So maybe take a short. Yes, sorry. Yeah, there was one there too. Sorry. Yes.
When you change between the stage and the film, how do you manage that? Because I think that in making of a film, you are in a 2-minute periods where you have to sort of bring out all the you can. And on the stage, you are in a 1 hour, and then you have a small break, and then you have to sort of do another hour, hour and a half.
Can you repeat the question for the recording, Ellen? Can you repeat the question so we can get it on the live stream?
help me.
Well,
The stamina.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. The question was, what is the difference between acting on film and acting for the stage, and the difference in timing? Like, sometimes different use of time in both.
Is that right?
media.
Yeah,
Oh.
and also in the film, the camera comes right to your eyes, so with a flicker of your eye, you make a statement.
Yes.
On the stage, if you sit in higher, a flicker of an eye doesn't tell.
Doesn't read.
Yeah. So in film, you can have close-ups, so you can't.
Well, you're answering the question beautifully. Really, when you're working with film, it's different, and it's wonderful, and it's inside, and you don't have to do as much, and it's a deep reality. And once in a while, you get a director where it can be fun. Otherwise, you're just like the camera. You're something to move around, and then you hit your mark, and it's when you find a time in film where the director is really interested in the actor, the way you get on theater, it's a rarity. It is. I got to work with a couple of wonderful, wonderful directors, and so you know what it can be. For TV, it's you hope you have your lines memorized in time because they just changed it 5 minutes ago. My hat goes off to anybody who does soap operas. I don't know how they do it. And their mind has to be a different way. You can't really act, you just get the lines and get the feeling kind of across, and it's not deep. For stage, you have to have your techniques, right, guys? If you don't, you lose your voice, and the audience can't hear you. And then of course there's the director. I was an actor. I directed because there was nobody else around to do it. My father was the kind of man, you learn the part, you can play it, honey, that's okay. Yeah, you just go over there. He wasn't a director. So that frustrated me, coming from Campbell and Tyrone Guthrie, where I learned so much about directing, and so I started doing it. And now I love it. I love the whole thing. I guess what I feel like is a really good policeman. It's theirs, and they're living their world, and I'm going to help them be seen as best I can, do their honorable thing that they can do within the structure of the play. I'm not an auteur or some kind of director. And thereby, very often when I leave a production, I don't have to keep coming back, because they're never fighting. They're never fighting what it is. They love it. It's theirs.
So we're going to take a short break. We're going to take a 15 minutes break, and then back. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Hi. I'm going to introduce our next speakers. So we have our company members that you all know, but we have Bethany Jillard, who's in her 4th season at the festival now, and she's playing Desdemona, of course, in Othello, and Constance in Three Musketeers. And she's a graduate of the University of Toronto and of our conservatory here at the festival, and has done wonderful roles. You might remember her as Cecile in Dangerous Liaisons and many more. And she has also worked around the country and abroad, and she was Scarlett O'Hara recently
Yes.
the Manitoba Theatre Center. Dion Johnstone is in his 8th season at the festival, and he's a graduate of the University of Alberta and also a graduate of the conservatory. You remember him as Caliban in The Tempest in 2010, Aaron in Titus Andronicus, Valentine in The Two Gentlemen of Verona. So wonderful roles here, and also, again, a lot of work around the country and abroad. It was Mark Antony in Julius Caesar in Chicago, and Boromir in Lord of the Rings, and he has also done a lot of TV and film. Graham Abbey is in his 14th season. Of course, he's Iago in this year's Othello, and then he plays Athos in The Three Musketeers. And he was Posthumus in Cymbeline in 2012, and again, many other great roles. You remember him also, again, from movies and TV. He was in The Border for CBC. He is also the artistic director of the Groundling Theatre, so a very well-rounded artist, as they all are. I'm also going to introduce Caroline Bicks, who's going to be our last speaker, and she's going to speak at the end, kind of summing things up and giving her take on the play. And Caroline is a very big Shakespeare scholar and an educator and professor. She is a professor at Boston College in Massachusetts. And she also teaches in the summer at the Breadloaf School of English, which maybe you'll say a couple things about. It's a great program for teachers. She has written several books, including midwiving subjects in Shakespeare's England. And currently she's working on a book on English adolescent girls and the idea of the adolescent female performer, and it's a very interesting topic. She also does non-academic writing, and she has written columns in the New York Times, a column called Modern Love. There is a famous one about her husband. And she also curates a blog with Michelle Ephraim called Everyday Shakespeare When Bard Meets Life, which is a very interesting one. So, and you also have a background as an actress, I believe. So again, a very well-rounded scholar and a great person to have here. So, thank you. So we want to start talking again about the characters and the dynamics in the play. So all of you can say something about your role and then have a conversation about it, and then we can open to questions. And again, Caroline and Ellen can jump in. So who wants to start?
I just want to point out, because I'm such a nice guy, I got chocolate.
Yeah, I'm this.
Are you sharing them?
He won't share them.
See.
He doesn't share.
I always find these things hard to talk about a character, I suppose, in an isolated way. I mean, I love this notion of the dynamics, and hopefully we can get a good discussion going, because I'm fascinated by this play. But I can speak a little bit about what's in this man's brain, I suppose, or what's in my brain playing this man. Othello, or Iago, is a tricky nut, because, of course, everybody's obsessed with what's going on. Why does he do what he does? What happens in the end? It was very interesting near the end of rehearsals. Chris Abraham, who's lurking above the vom there, I said to him, and we had great discussions, and Dion was part of this, and it struck me, and this is very late, I'm talking like 3 days before opening. I said, Chris, this is my question. Does he win? Which seems so basic, and the two of us stood there, and Chris was like,
It's such a guy
"That's
question."
great question." but I mean that in the largest sense. Is it a victory for Iago? It is a guy question. We can get into that.
Yeah. Smackdown right here.
You know, as he stands there over the tragic loading of the bed, what crosses through his brain? Is there remorse? Is there sadness? Did he finish the job? It struck me, for those of you who were at the matinee yesterday, and I can say this changes every time I play this role. I took in those words about look at the tragic loading of this bed, and kneeling on the bed was a living Cassio. And what went through my brain was, I missed one. It was an amazing thing to go through my brain. That's sort of the state I'm in. I get at the end of that play, and that poor Brad is a dear friend of mine, but I was like, if I had just, and I started thinking, if I just got him, everything would have been fine. But it's a crazy journey. I can safely say, and I've said this publicly in places, I've never had more difficulty with a character. I just mean living inside the skin of somebody. And I've had the great fortune of playing some bad fellows, the Scottish King being one. But he gets the lovely, he gets to die in the end. And Iago doesn't. His music doesn't resolve. It just floats out into an awful river of despair, and that's hard as an actor to live inside. The first time we put this play in front of an audience, and I've never had this, and I'm not one of those actors that sort of those wanky artsy things, but the first time we had an audience, as soon as the lights came down, I started to bawl my eyes out. And I couldn't stop crying.
That's what that play
and
does.
poor Janine, who's our lovely head of voice and everything else therapist, and she was in the wings, and I just grabbed her for my life and wouldn't let go of her. I just needed a hug. And so I found ways to have more fun in my life that I get that out, but it's a wild journey to keep all that inside. And I think what it was having the energy of an audience receiving it. I'm going to talk about Douglas Campbell a lot now, but Douglas used to talk about an ectoplasm that goes between actor and audience. Literally, that from the voice, from the mouth, we connect to you all, and you connect back to us. That's the joy of live theater. And when that ectoplasm is electric, you can't beat live theater. That's why we do what we do, and that's why you guys come and see it. And so when you added that other end to it, that end of the ectoplasm that received what I was giving and gave back so much, lots of hatred, that I think I just got sort of overwhelmed with it all. Iago, my gosh, I mean, when I come to look at Shakespeare, I guess most actors do, our clues are all in Shakespeare, and he drops beautiful breadcrumbs. And when he doesn't drop a breadcrumb, I think it's always on purpose as well. He allows the actor to find their way between two very disparate breadcrumbs. And there's lots of that in Othello. I think there's lots of finding our own way, and we chat that out with our actors and our director. I'm an actor that learned long ago from Bernie Hopkins, a great, wonderful actor here, that to keep secrets. I think secrets are important for actors. And so you obviously share them with your director, but sometimes not with your fellow actors. So I have lots of secrets that I won't share today because my fellow actors are present. But what we do know about Iago, we hear. He comes out right off the bat. What's happened at the start of the play? Well, a marriage has taken place. In this time we're talking about, a marriage meant two things. One is vows and one is consummation, which would actually make it binding. What we know is vows have taken place. What we don't know, or Iago doesn't know, at least he says, is about the consummation. So there's a sense of urgency at the top of this play to bring that to a halt, because it may be happening as we speak. So his idea is to stir up Brabantio and create a street brawl that might stop that. He then has that scene with Othello where he asks, are you fast married? Has it happened? And he won't give him any hint. And his street brawl plan doesn't work. And what Iago does a lot of time is go to plan B, C, D, and E. Yeah. He's able to think brilliantly on his feet. And what I did notice early on in this play, and what I notice more and more, is he gets all his clues on his feet from what happens in the scenes. So a very early clue for him in what we call the court scene, or when we first meet Desdemona and they're sent off to war, is Brabantio's wonderful line when he says to his daughter, he hath deceived his father, and may you. Well, Iago is 8 feet from that line, and that births the kernel of a plan. As my dear friend said, there's a great quote that says, no battle plan survives the first shot. And I think that's Iago's journey as well. So he now knows, okay, the seeds are planted for the potential of her to be unfaithful. He said it publicly. In fact, what's even more important is the retort Othello gives, and he says, my life upon her honor.
Upon her faith.
Upon her faith.
Oh, see, I don't listen to my other actors. My life upon her faith. There's the start of a play. And so Iago takes that and begins his journey. And as he moves through, he's absolutely brilliant at changing his plan. I had a great little thing written out to look at it like a chess game, I guess, which is quite interesting. You have your beginning game, your middle game, and your end game. I think Iago has a wonderful beginning game. His middle game is brilliant, but also what happens with Iago, Chris very early on, a year before we started rehearsals, sent me a question that said, why do you think fate plays into Iago's hands so much? And I hadn't read the play, so I didn't answer. But it's an amazing question, because when we think about the middle game of Iago in the chess game, he gets a lot of help from things outside. Why does the handkerchief fall at that moment, that his wife gives it to him? I mean, why does Cassio step right into his plan and already solicit his wife? I mean, it's like things were meant to be. And I don't think it's something in this play that can be ignored. I think Shakespeare was touching on something. We've called it in our rehearsals this dark fate, this sense of a power that's beyond themselves. And I don't think it's too crazy to think that Iago thinks by the end that he has some access to that power. As we all believe, many of us believe in fates and heaven and religion, I think Iago believes in a darker fate. And I think the notion of devils and darkness in this play for him is quite real. I will say that by the end of that play, when Iago says to Othello, I bleed, sir, but not killed, there's something in that where he thinks he can't be killed. I think he thinks fate is on his side and he can't lose. Where that takes him, we don't know. But so I'll be quiet here in a minute. I just, when you get to the middle game of his plan, fate is a big part, but also his plan is a big, so what he needs to do is isolate characters. He needs to have characters not talk to each other. For those of you who've been in any legal battles, lawyers do this beautifully. They cut off communication, and so we pay lots of money, and they make sure people don't talk to each other, and they control the game.
Kill all the lawyers.
Kill all the lawyers. But I say this, my dad was a judge, so I can say this. So Iago's, part of his plan is to do with isolation, and he's brilliant at it. Or fate plays brilliantly into his hands that people don't talk. If there were any two of these characters that did talk at any time, they grabbed a 2-minute coffee, he'd be foiled. But he's able to keep them apart, and he makes sure they stay apart. You can't speak. Othello has to hide. I'll control Cassio. Mm-hmm. Keep quiet. He says, I'm going to tell him this, don't do it. Until he makes one error. And that is he sends his wife to Othello. Why he does that, people have written books about. I mean, you can talk about the fury of that scene and how the balls are starting to get out of control for him. But that's the one time he sends one of his pawns to speak to another pawn, and it ends up in his destruction. And there have been actors who have played that line. I'm talking about the line where he says, Amelia, run you to the citadel and tell my lord and lady what hath happened. My take on that is that he doesn't know what Othello has done yet. So he thinks the plan can still be stopped because his plan didn't work. He wasn't able to kill Cassio. If he was, then we can go ahead with plan B. But it is an error of judgment. In a great tactician, it's an error. And in the end, he's outdone by, as I'm sure these guys will talk about it, we can, and it was Chris's brilliant notion in this, it truly is a play about love. It is a play about heart. I wrote down the word heart when you were speaking because Iago works from the heart. I know that sounds strange, but I don't think we can do any Shakespearean character without starting with heart. And he works from the heart. The stronger emotion, always the stronger emotion than hate, is love. Speaking at the day after September 11th, I guess, I had wished so much on that day, and there's another Dougie Campbell story, because we did Henry IV on that day, and he spoke to the audience after that play.
Bless him.
And he spoke about love and the strength of love. And I so wished Mr. Bush that day had got on the TV and said, you know, the greatest emotion today is love. We should beat down hate with love. Anyway, that's my little distinction. But for Iago, love is strongest. And I leave that with you in any way you want to take it. Many people have talked about a literal relationship between Othello and Iago. Whether or not it's a homosexual relationship, that's to be debated. But from Iago's perspective, it is a great well of love for this man and a great respect. And that's why jealousy creeps in. That's when jealousy creeps in. Two people get in the way of that love, Cassio and Desdemona, and they have to be eliminated in order to get there. I'll say something briefly. There was a question in the 50s. They used to ask psychopaths to see whether they thought like a psychopath. I've only had one person get close to this answer. And who was it? I think it was Ben Carlson.
Let's move on to the
No, it's good. The question is, a man is attending his father's funeral, and a man shows up in a black coat and a black hat, and he goes home and kills his mother. Why? Everybody tries to think of a complicated answer. The psychopath's answer is, he liked the man in the black coat and the black hat. So he figured if he went home and killed his mother, he would show up at his mother's funeral as well. That's the thinking of a psychopath. That's the thinking of Iago.
Dion.
Wow.
I just want to pick up just a little bit on that love that grows between Iago and Othello. It's like there's two relationships in two main relationships, I think, for Othello in the play. One is with his wife, with Desdemona, and Iago almost becomes like the second wife for him. Iago brilliantly cuts off his access, the free access to Desdemona, and also his access to Cassio very early on, who I would say is Othello's, best friend, best mate, and then Iago takes that place for him, and Othello's in a position where he doesn't know who to trust anymore, and he needs to lean that energy, that he needs that support from somewhere, and it goes to fatally to Iago. So it's weird. The end of where we have our part one, where the pact is made and Othello makes Iago his lieutenant, is almost like a second marriage, So it's and I don't think it has anything to do with, in some productions there are homosexual elements at play, but I think it's stronger than that. I think it's the need to be seen, the need for love, and Othello's need to place that somewhere, because he doesn't know where he can go, who he can trust anymore. I think there's a lot of pitfalls playing Othello, and I think in order to have a fair chance at it, you need a really solid cast, but you also need a really good director, and our director is right up there, Chris Abraham, and honestly, without him, I don't know where we'd be in this production, and we owe a lot to his vigilance in terms of not taking the easy route in this story. Always trying to get the best of what's contained in the text. And one of the things we started to find in the process, especially towards the latter process, is it's very easy for the audience at a certain point to check out of Othello and just go, I can't respect this man anymore. And even despite all of your best efforts, there are going to be audience members who will go, well, in the end, he kills his wife. I don't understand why they didn't have a conversation, and I can't get behind that. And so, we worked quite a lot to go, well, you're never going to be able to fully bridge that because that's the story. It's an unfortunate fact that he trusts in Iago and never has that clear conversation with his wife. It's his tragedy. But how do you make it as difficult for the audience? How do you keep them tuned in for as long as possible and not make it an easy thing for them? And part of that strategy is it's a love story. And at every point in the play, you can't lose contact with the love that they have for each other. Mm-hmm. And even if they can't, when they can't communicate and when that breakdown becomes worse and worse, it's the love of, Othello's trying to save her soul, trying to make sure she gets to heaven. And it's all, and every step, every move that he makes comes at a loss to himself. There's no joy in any of it. And it's really tough because, very, very early on, certainly in our part one, you listen to his language and it's ferocious. When that monster within him is tapped, it comes out like a tidal wave. And the images are so strong, and it's very easy to give in to a bloodlust, and we were tapping on that, in the process, and then we started to realize this is not right. It's starting to come out of a sense of almost like wounded pride. And there's almost a sense of satisfaction that what I'm doing is just and it's right and this is giving me satisfaction, and we found that's the wrong tack, and that's where the audience is going to start to tune out. One of our early previews, my aunt and uncle came to the show, and we went out for dinner afterwards, and I said, so yeah, this is kind of what we've been wrestling with, and what do you think? I mean, were you able to get behind Othello by the end of the play? And they were like, no. I'm like, you're my aunt and uncle. Okay, that's interesting. Why not? And they said, you had this line towards the end where you talked about you did all of this out of honor. And it just reminded me of the honor killings that still happen today, and I just can't get behind it. And I had a flashback to earlier in our rehearsal process when we were trying to figure out, okay, what lines can we cut, because we really needed to get this under 3 hours. And I remember Bethany saying, when I'm lying there dead,
I hate that line.
of everything that Othello says, it's that one line, for naught I didn't hate, but all in honor, and it just makes me cringe, because it reminds me of honor killings,
Yeah.
and we debated. Well, it was a different time, and it's and we thought, no, we can make it work. We'll keep it in, but it did that sort of really landed with me. How do you bridge that? Chris at one point said, well, in order for you to say that line, that not I didn't hate, but all in honor, every action that you take throughout this play, no matter how much you're wrestling with the natural rage and sense of betrayal and the pain and the grief, you still can't act out of hate. You have to find a way of wrestling with that. And I think for Othello to get where he has in this society, he's had to be so careful about every single decision that he makes. He's under the microscope all the time. People are waiting for him to fall. He's got to be certain about every choice that he makes, and that's how he's built his life. And So to be thrown in a realm of uncertainty where he doesn't have all the facts and facts are being withheld from him, that really throws him off of his base. So as he's wrestling with confusion and wrestling with grief and the sense of betrayal and with rage, the strategy became he still has to try to master that. He can't give full sway to that and let it completely overtake him. He's still trying to find what is the most ethical decision, what is the right decision in all of this, because I can't let myself be overcome by these baser passions. And then the tragedy becomes, how long can you stretch that out before eventually he does become overcome by that? And that's the tragedy of a man trying to hang on for as long as possible, trying to be as clear, trying to have his possession of his mind for as long as possible, and the situation becoming so overwhelming that physiologically it goes out of his control. I mean, by the time he has the fit, he's no longer able to even see things clearly. It's physical, it's chemical, it's emotional, and then eventually he loses his sight, his ability to master himself. But beautifully, in the end, through Desdemona and through Emilia finally having that flash of I see the picture and speaking the truth, all of that fog, just for that final moment, is able to be released from his mind, that he can at least make peace in the end and do what he feels is the just and the right thing to do, the responsible thing to do, is to take his own life.
Well, it's the fulfillment of the vow that he made right at the beginning of the play, my life upon her faith.
Yeah.
And he, I think, in that moment, he understands just how completely he lost trust in her faith. And so his life is the forfeit of that vow made right at the very beginning.
Yeah.
We talked about that a little bit early on, but yeah.
And it's interesting, even now, more and more, as I say the line, for not I didn't hate, but all in honor. The moment of saying that becomes a new relationship to that word honor. Well, what did that mean? Why did I follow that? What and on the heels of that is realizing, that he betrayed his best friend Cassio. And because he thought he was following the honorable path. So what does honor mean when it causes you to sacrifice everything that you love?
So Bethany.
I love you.
Beautiful. I was going to say that line now it's not as difficult at all for me, and I think part of once we started tracking that idea of honor back through the play and how to make sure that none of those actions were coming out of hate or anger, we really started to lock into the love story. And one of the great gifts that I think I'm being given to be Desdemona in this production with Dion playing Othello is that there's not a moment in the play until the very, very end, but where I can't look at him and see love. And so I never feel like she's just blindly accepting her fate, her punishment, her whatever it is. That she looks at him and I can see that there's love there, and so there's something wrong. And she spends so much time in the play trying to just figure out what is wrong, because she knows him. And I think if you read the notes for the play, I think there's a little bit of talk about one of the great things that this play brings up for us is the question, the terrible question, how do we ever truly know anyone or anything? And I think Desdemona's answer to that is, you just do. She just does. She knows him. And and yes, that's about faith, maybe. Like, then we can split hairs and say, well, that's about faith and not knowledge. And so but she's able to operate in her life from that place of faith. And knowing that he is behaving in a way that's not him, or that's a different side of him, there's something going on, and I think she does believe that, could we just get to the bottom of this? And you know, that conversation, that 2-minute coffee that we never get to have, we try a whole bunch of times, and there is, I think, that dark fatality running through the play it's working against us. It's you know, her good heart bringing up Cassio right at the moment that it's gonna, and losing the handkerchief and getting put off by that story and not being able to just say, I lost it and I feel horrible. You know, and all the way until, I love what you said about Martha saying when she played it, it's like getting on a train and hoping you'll get to a different destination every time, because I think I can really relate to that. Because right up until the very end, you know, we're sitting on this bed together, the bed that we've made love in, the bed that it's just us. And there's that feeling of, there's some calm in it. You know, I think we're both in that place that you can get with your significant other, that you're both kind of going, okay, I want it to be reasonable here. And she finally gets to say to him, so what's the matter? What's going on? But it's too late. And that's, I think, I always feel like at that point, so what's the matter? The handkerchief, you gave it to Cassio. No, I didn't. Couldn't the play go somewhere else? Like, I do genuinely feel that every time. Couldn't it go somewhere else at that moment? And I think that's also a bit of Shakespeare's genius, because for me, that's when it becomes clear that Cassio has been killed, or at least that's what she's being told. That's the moment in the play for me where she's able to fight just for herself. Fighting for him has always been connected to fighting for herself, and it's very late in the game that finally, oh, banish me, my Lord, but kill me not. Kill me tomorrow. Let me live tonight. One more prayer. One more. You know, and I think he's still wound up in it, because I do think right until the very end there is that effort to save his soul from killing her, because she knows what that means. And so, you know, but at that point in the play, Shakespeare allows her to beg for her life in the midst of all of that, and that's a really powerful thing. And we were talking right before we came on about maybe talking about a difficult moment to share in terms of rehearsal. And one of the things that I had no clue about how it could possibly, how it lived, I had no idea about it, was her final moments in the play, to come back to life, essentially, to regain consciousness very briefly, in order to say, nobody killed me. I did it, I myself, and commend me to my kind Lord. Farewell. And I think anyone can see clearly what a struggle that can be, and yet it's exactly the right ending inside of it for her, which we sort of discovered in rehearsal. You know, that over time you start to understand what it is that her responsibility is. And I read some beautiful stuff about it. I can't remember for sure which essay it was in that I read, but they talk about Desdemona's end, that with her in the play, she goes on this journey, and the result of it is that in her final moments, she is heaven, air, and music, and harmony, heaven, air, and harmony. That's what she offers. That's her final gift. And you juxtapose that with what they say in this essay, Iago's ending is hell, water, and silence. And they talk about, I remember it also mentioning, in Hamlet, he also says the rest is silence. And there's a real uneasiness, I think, with that, in the end of everything is silence, but her end of everything is harmony. And it is the maintaining of faith and love right through it all. And, she's able to come back for those moments and give quite an extraordinary gift. And I love that. I love that, her place in all of that. And I mean, it's not an easy journey, and it's, when we got to running the show, even before we had audiences, we'd run the play, and I'd kind of feel, it's like anything with a play, you feel kind of exhilarated after. It can be the most horrible journey, but there's a sense of exhilaration in what we do, and having told that story and gone through all of that. It's not real life, it's so big. And so it's kind of a drug, that being able to live those big lives. But about 45 minutes after I would get home, like clockwork, I would start to cry. And I'd cry and cry and cry. And it felt, I felt so ridiculous, because I mean, much like Graham has said, I don't like to be indulgent in that way. I always feel like it's a bit wanky as an actor to say, it costs us so much, but it does. This play has proved to me that it does, and that's not to say. I mean, I think a good cry after the play is I'm allowed now. I just say it's okay, and I think too in the running of it, I keep reminding myself to celebrate the really amazing things and the blessings that are part of this play. And one is the gift of her, that I am really inspired, and to live inside this character has opened me up and has challenged me and made me grow in ways as a human that I really appreciate. And then also the fact that to be part of this production with this team and these people is a kind of gift that doesn't come around all the time for us and as actors, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for Dion and for Deb playing Amelia and for Graham playing Iago, that, I love that little scene we have together, and there's a part of me as the actor that also sometimes wonders, maybe I did it. Maybe he's gonna stop it now. Everything's gonna be okay. And I mean, Graham's, great work is for Desdemona, she's not looking for him to be evil, but I think there's always a little part of me that's looking, and I can't tell, which I love. It's so great. So that's, there's so much to be grateful for, even on a journey with in a play that hurts us this much in some ways.
Thank you so much. So, Caroline, what is your...
Well, I can just tie all this together so neatly and easily. I just wanted to start by thanking Francesca for bringing me, and of course Dr. Jules and Joe Harris for making this possible. It's such a privilege to be up here with actors and theater professionals. They remind me every day why it is that I continually go back to studying and reading and writing about these plays, but that there is a life behind these plays, and these are plays that were meant to be performed. We can't forget that. They aren't meant to be read. And I'm so touched by thinking about the thread that seems to be connecting what we're talking about here, which is, how do you understand faith? How do you understand something that is invisible? This is a hard play for me. When I first read it in college, I did not like Desdemona. I said, it's just discovering my feminism. I thought, you can't, why are you with this man? And just walk away, in that way you do when you're 20 and you're so passionate about these things. And I've only come to fully understand this, I think, for me, through my scholarship, looking at, my research has primarily been on Shakespeare and on his time period and how were women being thought of, how were bodies being thought of, how was marriage being thought of. But more and more thinking about the religious controversies of the day, because everything's connected to religion in Shakespeare's day. You can't talk about anything without talking about how people were thinking about their faith. And I think it's a good way in. I had prepared some comments, and I don't want to be tedious, so maybe I'll try to be brief and try to have content too, because what I'm really struck by, and I have the great privilege of being able to teach these plays in bulk. You know, I do it at the Breadloaf School of English, which is a wonderful program for mostly high school teachers getting their master's degrees in literature over the course of summers. We also have a professional theater group that comes, puts on a show in 6 weeks, and will come and work with us in the classroom. I do it with my undergraduates. And the privilege of being able to read and talk about 7 texts in a short amount of time is you get to see what were the issues Shakespeare was chewing on and thinking about and developing over the course of his career. And one of the ones that I'm really attracted to in this play, he's so obsessed with the visual and the ocular in a way that, and the harms of the ocular and the seductions of the ocular in a way that in his other plays, you think about the end of Hamlet, right? There's the same tragic loading of bodies at the end of Hamlet, but they take them to the stage. Bear Hamlet like a soldier to the stage. Take all the bodies to the stage. Let's look at them. But at the end of Othello, Lodovico says, "This is unbearable to look on. It poisons the sight. Cover the bodies." There's something in this play about, on the one hand, the lures and the seductions of the visual. I mean, that's the part of the tragedy of Othello, is that he starts looking for things. You know, look to her more, right? I mean, that line is so, look to her. You start looking for things and you're going to lose your way.
Iago even saying, observe. You know,
observe her, that's his power. Look. And one of the ways I've come to think about this play in thinking through how Shakespeare deals with particularly all the debates about faith and what makes a true Christian and how are you truly saved during Shakespeare's time, is I've looked at the conflict between Catholicism and Protestantism, which is what defined so much of the traumas about faith and what you're supposed to believe for people living during Shakespeare's time. And all of his plays deal with this in one way or another, whether it's Hamlet saying, are you a ghost? I'm not supposed to believe in ghosts, really. I'm a Protestant from Wittenberg. I mean, like, there's certain ways that you can see, right? Every one of his plays is negotiating this problem. And I am not arguing Shakespeare's Catholic, by the way. I'm just going to put that right out there. I don't think we can know what he was. But he certainly knew and understood all the religious controversies of his day. So I might stop and just do a little reading because I have prepared some context, and sometimes I lose my train of thought. And it's important to keep all these balls in the air. And I was also thinking about Chris Abraham's note on the text on the play, when you said you were trying to look closely at the way the play tests Christian values. And I think that's absolutely deeply in this. And it's also about how you test love. And love and faith and Christian values are all one and the same. Every time Desdemona talks about her love for Othello, it's in terms of faith. And I sanctified my soul to him. And you can't separate these threads out. They're all connected. So I'm just going to sort of step back and put on my Shakespeare glasses, my professor glasses, which I now need, sadly, to talk about sort of these differences that were going on during Shakespeare's time. Because by the time he writes Othello, England is officially a Protestant country, but how do you force people to change the way they believe, right? I mean, it's a traumatic shift in so many ways. But one thing I wanted to talk about is that even though there are all these different branches of Protestantism, there's this doctrine of sola fide, right? It's salvation through faith alone, and that's foundational to all Protestant branches. And remember, I'm thinking of this just in the context of Shakespeare's time. So I'm not saying this is the truth about Catholicism. I'm saying this is the way that Protestant reformers talked about the differences between Catholics and Protestants at the time. So in contrast to the Catholic belief in salvation through works and participation in rituals, Protestants could only be saved by faith in what they couldn't see, right, in the salvation. in the promise of the gospel. And they were expected to go to the Word of God directly, to read the Bible or have it read to them in the vernacular, and to interpret it for themselves rather than rely on any intermediary priest figure. And in this way, they could have direct access to God and to his teachings. So in the eyes of the Protestant reformers, Catholics relied just too much on these exterior shows, right? These idolatrous, theatrical displays of devotion. That's why there's so much overlap between the ideas about theater and the ideas about, about Catholicism, right? In many ways, it was considered a theatrical religion. That's why the Puritans wanted to shut down the theaters. It's like, it's too much of a display, right? All this anti-display. The whole point for Protestants is that you're looking within. You're not supposed to be looking out, right? You're supposed to have direct access. Don't have visual aids. There's a great quote from the Protestant reformer John Calvin. And this is the last time I'm going to quote something scholarly. And he described, I lost my mic. He described his ideal of an invisible church made up of all true believers. And he cites that this is in stark contrast to the Pope's church, in which, quote, are mingled many hypocrites who have nothing of Christ but the name and outward appearance. So enter honest Iago, I think, in many ways. And Othello's relationship with Iago and his reliance on him to provide him with these visuals, right, to interpret his wife for him. And in many ways, that's, for me, the tragedy of the play. It's his failure to have faith in what you can't see, right? The chastity of a woman. How do you ever know that? You can't. The love that someone has for you, you just have to take that at face value. You have to believe it because they're telling you. His failure to trust in his own interpretation of what he's going to call Desdemona's the fair paper of her face. So when he first gets that handkerchief, there's a really interesting quote. Iago revels in the sort of power of the handkerchief, even as he recognizes its emptiness as an object. He says, trifles light as air are to the jealous confirmation strong as proofs of holy writ. And he's right, unfortunately, right? The handkerchief, it's this really pagan object with all these associations with Egyptian sorcerers and the blood of young virgins. And it starts to replace Othello's faith, right, in his wife. It becomes his holy writ. And in that way, it's a failure of his sort of Protestant Christianity, or practice that he's supposed to have of believing in the invisible, right? I was going to add one more layer here, and I'm not sure now if I will, but I think I need to. And it's a complicated one. It's a sticky wicket. But English Protestants, they aligned themselves with the Jews of the Old Testament, which might seem counterintuitive, like, no, it's supposed to be Christians versus Jews. But actually, the Protestants saw in the Jews a model for, they were God's chosen people. They were the original receivers of God's word and his holy writ. David Katz is a great scholar of this, and he argues that the Protestants in early modern England, they needed the Jews to help them understand the Old Testament, to give them that unmediated access to the text. So why do I bring this up? I bring this up because there's this moment in the play and this line that I can't get away from. It's so critical, right? And it's when Iago says, I am not what I am. And it's a direct reference and subversion of the moment in the Old Testament in Exodus when God is speaking to Moses as the burning bush. And I'll give that because Shakespeare, of course, he knew his Bible. Everyone knew their Bible. And this is actually quoted from the Geneva Bible that Shakespeare would have been reading. Then Moses said unto God, behold, when I shall come unto the children of Israel and shall say unto them, the God of your fathers hath sent me unto you. If they say unto me, what is his name? What shall I say unto them? And God answered Moses, I am that I am. I am hath sent me unto you. And I'm really struck by this. What is this moment? Why does Shakespeare pervert this moment with Iago, right? What does this mean? And I think it really represents that contamination of faith, right? The muddying of any clear interpretation and access to God when he says, I am not what I am. I think that's why he can't die at the end of the play either, because you can't scapegoat, you can't say, oh, it's just him, that's all, we'll just kill him and it'll all be fine. No, we're always going to be challenged. Our faith is always going to be challenged. So you can get rid of him, but there's still going to be the problem, right? So I'm interested in this too because Othello, in certain ways at the beginning of the play, he's like an open book. That's how he describes himself. So I'm really interested in how Othello changes. He starts out, when Iago rushes to the inn and says, you got to get out of here, Brabantio's coming, they're after you. And Othello has this wonderful moment where he just says, not I must be found. My parts, my title, and my perfect soul shall manifest me rightly. And I think in that moment, he really represents this ideal relationship between text and self, right? That Protestant and Hebrew model as well, that you are what you are, right? What you are on the inside will manifest yourself rightly on the outside, and he has a perfect soul. And I think it's interesting to note that even though Iago and Brabantio, they try to stir up all that racist hatred, right, against Othello in that scene by focusing on his sooty bosom and his thick lips and all those external signs, they don't really work in the beginning, right, on the Venetian Senate. They still see him as valiant Othello. They see his virtue. Now, obviously, there's still a lot of racist discourse going on. The Venetians still ascribe negative qualities to blackness, but at least here they only see the fairness in Othello, his virtue and his valor. And what I'm really struck by is that Desdemona sees this as well, right? When she describes falling in love with him, in fact, what's interesting is neither of them talk about looks, at least in the beginning. It has nothing to do with, he doesn't even call her fair Desdemona, I think, until he's on Cyprus, right? I mean, in the story of how they fell in love, it has not a whit to do with anything external, nothing that you see, right? She describes how her heart is subdued even to the very qualities of my lord. I saw Othello's visage in his mind, which is so critical. She doesn't see his visage in his black skin, right? Or what other people might judge him by, but rather in the truth that's within him. She falls in love with it and is faithful to his honors and his valiant parts. And it's those invisible qualities that she consecrates her soul to. She loves him for the dangers he's passed, the stories he tells her. And it's her appetite and her pity for those stories that really forges that sacred bond between them. And I do feel like there's something there about the Protestants' attraction to the Old Testament stories, because in a lot of ways, scholars have talked about how, Othello is circumcised. I mean, he says, I took by the throat the circumcised dog at the end, and he smotes him. And yes, you could say, yes, that's the Muslim barbarian, but it is also the Jew. In certain ways, I think he has that initial authority as also connected to a past, right? These stories that people want to know, that early modern Protestants want to know and understand and connect to. But I want to talk about, it's really interesting, everyone took up that scene, My Life Upon Her Faith, and I think that is such an important scene, right? Because I think that is when the tragedy starts to turn tragic. When everyone starts to turn to Desdemona and start looking at her, right? And she becomes the text that other people try to read. And there is that important scene where Brabantio, he turns to Othello, he says, look to her more if thou hast eyes to see, she's deceived her father, and may thee. And this emphasis on looking and seeing, it's all tied to mistrust. And Othello does respond, my life upon her faith. And that seems to be some kind of refusal to engage in that kind of ocular work, right? But at the same time, then he turns immediately and goes, honest Iago, my Desdemona must I leave to thee. And you think, oh, that's it. That's the beginning of it. He had it right, and it was like, now I'm turning her over to you, And I was really, when we were talking about that moment of how long they've had to spend together, it's really interesting because 9 months is the time they've actually had. That Shakespeare specifies, he loves the time frame 9 months, you can imagine. He mentions it in a number of his plays. And it's always the space in which love happens, desire happens. It's never good for men, is one thing. And it is the space in which Othello falls in love, right? I shouldn't say it's never good, but it makes men vulnerable. And in those 9 months, right, that's where they could engender something wonderful. Or you engender the monster, right, that Iago is going to come and engender. They don't get to engender the good that's going to come out of the 9 months. So they do have this very short time. So when he leaves her to him, you know, and they're on the ship together. You think, oh, this is it in the storm. And I loved the way in the production they had that just the minute you had that line, Graham, about, I can't remember now what the line is, right before the end, right before the ship and the storm, right?
The end of that.
I think it was right before the storm
Right,
to Cyprus. And it's something like, you know, I now,
Helen Knight must bring this monstrous birth
to light. So it's like, here's this birth, and you do get that sense that storm and the tempest, and it does seem like it's all the fates. Okay, just keeping an eye on the time. I just wanted to talk a little more about some other key moments when there's sort of that crack that opens. And 3-3 is obviously, it's this scene, right, where Othello goes from being someone who trusts his wife, right? I
do not think but Desdemona's honest.
I do not think but Desdemona's honest. It doesn't work, right? You could see Iago trying to be like, well, maybe I'll try this. Okay, I tried to do that. Well, what if how about that? Okay, I'll try that. You know, and you resist him. You do. You're good at it at first. You know, I trust her. Why should I say it's bad that she's good-natured and she likes to talk to people? And, you know, you see what that means. It doesn't mean she's not faithful to you. And then there's this moment where he starts to lose faith. And what is it? And part of it is because Iago echoes what Brabantio said. He said, look to her more, right? Again, it's about, you know, she did betray her father, you know? And it's like that does something.
In rehearsals, we called it the Iago drip.
Is that it?
like a morphine drip. That's
right. But that's the one.
Imperceptible at first, but
yes,
but there.
Something about that one that just, right? It gets him back. And another thing Iago says is, you know, I know the women of Italy, and you don't. So he calls attention to difference, right? And all the things that, you know, Othello, the insecurities. Well, yes, I am another, right? I'm not of these people. Maybe I don't know her the way that he knows her. So part of the crisis and the tragedy is he hands over the process of interpretation to Iago. And that's when things go bad. That's the tragedy. And you can see it in this larger Christian, you know, Catholic Protestant thing. You can see it in a number of ways, but certainly that problem of saying, you know, give me the ocular proof. When he says that, that's it. You know, make me to see it. He's given up any agency for himself in terms of interpreting his wife for himself. And to me, another key scene is when he goes and he grabs her hand. Do you remember that? So you guys did that so well. When you grab her hand and you, it's so beautiful because you're kissing it and you're saying, oh, it's hot. It's hot. Shakespeare, when women have hot hands in Shakespeare, it's always like a sure sign. It's just going. They all should have kept ice in their tea if they had ice. And all be good. Because the minute you have a hot hand, I mean, the same thing happens to Hermione in The Winter's Tale. It's the hot hand, you know. And that's all he can see. You got hot hand, moist hand, whore, right? That's all he can see. And she has this beautiful response, actually. She says, "'Twas this hand that gave away my heart," right? During their marriage ceremony. So she's reminding him it's sacred, right? And it's right after the marriage scene, which is absolutely a marriage scene between Iago and Othello. It's using the language of an Elizabethan marriage ceremony. They're doing all of the formal kneeling. They get married. She's out. He's replaced her. And she's reminding him of the moment when she married him, right? And saying, it was this hand that gave away my heart. It's connected to something inside, right? Again, it's my faith in you. So those are some of the scenes that I think are really important. That and the scene when he keeps going, handkerchief, 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 and she keeps saying, faith, no faith, my lord, no faith, my lord. She uses that word constantly. Again, trying to remind him, you're supposed to have faith. And then when that key scene after he's hit her, right? Which is a horrible, horrible scene, which is another scene where everyone's watching him, right? And this is a really key scene for thinking about, what are you going to believe? Are you going to believe what you see, or are you going to believe what you know of somebody, right? And that's another key scene because the Venetian representatives are looking at Othello and saying, is this the same noble Moor, right? Is this the same one? And Iago says, he is that he is. And I think that's a really profound line, because it echoes the I am that I am, right? He is that he is. But to me, what that question is saying is, well, what do you think? Because it's your responsibility. And that's kind of a Protestant move, actually. You know, it's sort of like, it's on you. If you believe something about somebody, you're the one who's supposed to, you have to take responsibility for that, ultimately. So that when Othello turns to her and he says, was this fair paper, this most goodly book made to write whore upon, really? and she says, no, as I am a Christian. No, as I shall be saved. She's always bringing up that Christian language during that. And she never gives up on him, right? And in that way, she's kind of that model of what a true Christian should be, right? I mean, it's really, she does believe in Othello's salvation, I think. I think she thinks to the end, he can be saved. So I think those key ending moments are really, really powerful, right? Her love's so strong, she says, her love doth so approve Othello that even his stubbornness, his checks, his frowns have grace and favor in them. And again, it's like she sees the grace in him, even through the violence. And a lot of critics have talked about the ways that Desdemona becomes a Christ figure at the end when she dies. I mean, not only does she come back from the dead briefly, right? Which is strange, especially given the way you killed her on stage. I mean, it was like, there's no way she's still alive. I mean, I was like, stop, she's dead, she's gotta be dead. And I loved the way you guys lingered on that visual. Because you're right, I think going back to something Ellen said, people are getting immune to seeing death, right, or violence. You can't look away from that. That is, it goes on and on and on. But she comes back from the dead, and she says, nobody, I myself, which is exactly what, Jesus died for our sins, right? That's the whole idea, and that if you just have faith in him, you too will be saved. Again, a very Protestant idea in certain ways. And the question is, will Othello be saved, right? I mean, that's to me the tough question. I wanted to end with one sort of textual problem in the play. Most productions do keep the quarto version that he is like a base Indian in his final speech. He says, I am a base Indian who threw that pearl away, more precious than all the tribe. In the folio version, it's Judean, and I actually think that works too. The base Judean, right, who I kissed thee or I killed thee. There's a lot of the Judas story in there, right? To throw away the pearl is to throw away Christ, right? And to betray Christ. I kissed thee ere I killed thee is the line that really, for me, makes that connection work. And in going back to that Old Testament issue, it feels like any continuity or sacredness between the Jew and the early modern Protestant there is just kind of severed when he kills himself, right? When he says, I'm going to take that circumcised dog by the throat, I'm going to slay it, and kill myself. So any continuity there is gone. So I have more questions than answers of this play, but I think that really that question of how do you have faith in something you can't see touches on not only love and the problem of the illegible female body too. You can't know if a woman, except if there's blood on the bed sheets, which I won't get into with the handkerchief. There's a lot there we could talk about, but the problem of looking for ocular proof when you just are supposed to have faith in the invisible. So, thank you.
So we have about 15 minutes for questions, so we can open up one there, and I'll repeat the questions for the recording.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be at the opening night of Othello, and to me it was the highlight of what has been an amazing season. Thank you, Mr. Giannolino. The standing ovation at the end was thoroughly deserved. It wasn't the usual obligatory opening night standing ovation, and yet I found it difficult because you people emotionally devastated me. Now, can you tell me, do you get that back from an audience, that you have hit an audience that hard? Do you get that back from that audience? Did you on that opening night?
Yeah.
So let me repeat the question for the recording. So the question is, at our opening night for Othello here in Stratford, there was a great standing ovation, and it was a really felt one. You could see that the audience had really been hit hard by the play. So the question is, how do you interact with the audience, and how do you see if you really affected it? So.
Yeah, I can feel the audience in this play, maybe more than I ever have in the past, especially really in the big temptation scene, which is our Act 3. You feel them, all the shifts and turns. you can feel people holding their breath in Act 5, which is the strangulation. And the feedback, I've never had so much feedback from people who've seen the show, so emotionally moved and needing to express that. So it feels, I mean, an incredible privilege to be a part of the show and to know that we've achieved something that really is leaving people walking out of the theater stunned, needing to process, that there's an ongoing conversation. It doesn't just end with the curtain call. And
I think it's interesting, Iago's journey with them too, because he gets to sort of talk to them quite a bit. and you, in this play more than many others, we've decided to really drop that fourth wall. But we played with, I say we, Chris and I, with that idea of how long can we hold them as his conscience. Because what's so interesting is the audience can't speak back. So it's this horrible journey of him putting his arm around you and saying, now, I'm gonna go home this afternoon and kill my dog. And there are two ways I can do that. I can smash its brains in with a rock, or I can drown it in the Avon River. If I drown it, and of course you just have to nod and smile and agree. where they get back at me is when they boo me at the end. But it's a neat relationship. It's neat. Yeah.
Question.
I first saw Othello in 1959 with Frances Hyland playing Desdemona and Douglas Campbell playing Othello. And it's been my favorite Shakespeare play since high school. But I've never understood Amelia. And why didn't she say something?
So I'll repeat the question. So the first production that was done here was in '59 with Douglas Campbell and Frances Hyland. And the question is, you said it's one of your favorite plays, but you never understood the character of Emilia. So if anybody has comments on Emilia.
I mean, I wish Deb was here to actually have to be able to answer it more completely. I mean, it's a doozy, I think. You know, why there's so many points where you think, why pick up the handkerchief and give it away? And I think, you know, I know that part of Deb's journey with this was that, well, her intention was to, and it's sort of unfortunate because I think we lose a little bit in understanding the language, because she says, I'll have the work ta'en out, which means I'll have it copied. And so her intention was always to have the hanky, get it copied, and give the copy away, and then eventually give because her whole, like, why does he want this? She doesn't know, you know, but in the, you know, over the course of that scene, I mean, I think with Emilia, we do have indications of a woman who loves her husband and fears him, and, you know, that there's that gets sort of tangled up. And then I think also it's important to remember how quickly the play moves. And especially in our production, we decided to deal with, it's a 3-day play, basically, once we get to Cyprus. That's only 3 days. So there's not a lot of opportunity. And I think that when you know that things are happening very quickly, you know, in the scene, where should I lose that handkerchief, Emilia? I know not, madam. Well, there's no reason to admit at that point that she's stolen it. She's gonna lose her job if she tells me that, you know, or that, you know, there's no danger yet in the handkerchief being missing. Then we have this weird scene, angry, about, not angry, hurt, afraid, confused.
Trying to have a conversation.
Cassia, what? You know, it all gets a bit messy. And I think that's her first idea that maybe there's something wrong, but it's also sort of like, okay, well, good thing it got stolen now, because now you can see he's jealous. All men are like this. It's better you learn this now than in, you know, than 3 years from now or 10 years from now, whatever.
And there might be as well some level of fear by time it really upsets Othello and not wanting to be in that path of his wrath, because by the end of the play, you know, she's not afraid of his wrath anymore. She's like, you have no more power to do me harm than I have to be hurt, and I claim that. So do your worst, you know. Whereas before, probably, you know, as you're saying, there's no reason to say anything right away. I'll get a copy and give it back, and no big deal. But then he just flipped out, like, wow, well now I really don't want to say anything because I don't want to be implicated
But
in
look
this.
who
and,
she's
you know.
married to.
Right.
And then not wanting to cross her
I mean,
husband.
if he can do him in,
Right.
he can get anything out of her whenever he wants it, however he wants it.
Yeah.
You know, she's covered with him.
It's what he does, and in the end, it is a love story. Love does win out in the end.
yeah.
Amelia's love for Desdemona is Iago's undoing. He doesn't understand that. He thinks if he says to her, "Be wise and get you home," and looks her straight down the barrel of her eyes, she will do it.
Does
He
that
goes-
help answer the question?
I love her, explosion of anger.
Oh, yes.
Well, she is like a volcano, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
but I
Well,
think that's also part of the play, right? Like that's because when the tide turns, we talked about this a bit in rehearsal, but when the tide turns, it turns. Like but we have to go as far as we can go along that path in order for that the real power of truth to be demonstrated in that moment. And I mean, she is a force of nature.
And I think that's her
extraordinary.
function is to
Yeah.
be the sounding bell of truth, you know, to be the one person. I mean, I think part of her journey is I am now. I've kept all of this inside for self-preservation for various means, but now I'm willing to risk my life to give it all up for the truth, because in the end, the truth is more important than one's own life in the bigger scheme of things. It's that sacrifice that pulls the veil, that clears all of the fog and the poison that's permeated everything up into to that point.
It's important too, though, that she was telling Othello, she is innocent. I've not seen her with anybody. You know, if we're talking about evidence, she's got a lot she's offering. He's not listening to it. So it's even before that final scene, she seems to be offering up things that he just won't listen to the women. You know, he won't listen. No, he doesn't. I mean, because you as well say, I'm innocent. What are you talking about? It's not just all the last scene. He just doesn't hear it.
I have a question there.
Yes, Othello and Iago and Cassio are soldiers. They're in the army, an all-male world with giving and carrying out orders and so forth. Could you speak about your ideas of what happens when the military world meets the civilian world and the problems that can cause?
So the question is, Othello, Iago, Cassio are soldiers, and they're used to get orders and give orders in the case of Othello. But what happens when the military world meets the civilian world and the real life issues that happen there?
Yeah.
It's at the base of so many of Shakespeare's plays, isn't it? I mean, it's extraordinary, and boy, that's a day in itself. I think for Iago, to give a brief answer, I suppose there's an understanding of this man, of this warrior, that he knows on the battlefield that he can't make sense of in the civilian world. And it's why so often when he is on the Iago drip, he uses words like manhood, and when he has the fit, he says he doesn't use the word womanly, but he says it's something unfitting such a man, you know. Man up, man up. He uses a lot of that language trying to bring out the soldier in him, the beast, because that's the man he knows. At the end of our act, when Othello says, he starts to call upon the powers of I step away from him, because that's now I've birthed that man I know on the battlefield. Now I've birthed the killer, you know. There are references, Iago says in our very first scene, though in the trade of war I have slain men, yet do I hold it very stuff of the conscience to do no contrived murder. So already he lays out that juxtaposition between killing on a field and civilian life. But as in so many of Shakespeare's plays, those lines begin to get blurred. The Scottish play is one too. And we watch the agony of a man who's just come back from killing many on a field to think about killing this one man in civilian life. That's something, you know, we deal with nowadays too. So there are books written on it, but that would be my brief answer to that, I guess.
Yeah.
Comment on it.
And I think a couple of things with Othello. Part of it is also a cultural thing, where he's not familiar with the Venetian society, and so I think he relies quite a lot on both Cassio and Iago to interpret for him. The wild thing is he believes himself to not be as well spoken as the courtiers of the time are, but he does nonetheless express himself quite elegantly and quite clearly. But it's almost something that he doesn't see within himself. I think he's doing just fine in the society. But because of that small insecurity that he has, it causes him to lean on the support. He leans on the support of Cassio in terms of, how do I woo Desdemona? How do I do this? And he leans on Iago. Iago, who within the military function is the guy that he goes to, you know, in terms of what's the temperature of the men right now? What are people feeling in the company? He's the ensign, the flag bearer, but also the spirit of the corps. And so he needs Iago to fulfill that same function in terms of society. You know, what's the right thing to do? What's the information? What's going on that I don't know about? Another thing I find interesting is obviously there's decorum and rules and structure to the military, and that has to be obeyed or things go into chaos. And when you see them in Cyprus, which is, you know, a military outpost, but with a civilian society, it's very important to Othello that people that his soldiers behave themselves, that you know, that there is a sense of decorum, and he flips out when his men when a brawl, you know, happens. That's not respectable. That's not supposed to happen. So I mean, I think it is an odd fit when you put a military in society, but there is supposed to be an order of things that allow the two to coexist peacefully. But then you've got this guy disrupting everything at every turn.
And the really radical thing is that Desdemona asks to go with him. Maybe you can speak to that. I mean, that's really strange. That's a strange request to make.
Really
in front of everyone, your father and the Senate. I want to go with my husband.
Well, and that she says at that top of the play, you know, my heart's subdued even to the very quality of my lord. And I understand that when she's responding to the Duke as saying, I get it. I know what I'm asking for. But I have aligned myself with his honors and his valiant parts. That's the part of him that I consecrated myself to. So if you don't let me go, if I'm left behind, the him that I love is, you know, that's who I want to be. I want to be with the warrior general. Whether or not she really understands what that collision will be, I don't know. I mean, and I don't know if Iago wasn't interfering, would it have been a really horrible place? But I mean,
you get the sense that if they were just left to their own devices, they are going to be just
they
fine.
Would have been all right.
The love that they have is true, but they're also establishing. You see them establishing. You see when Desdemona is negotiating for Cassio. You know,
she's trying to take on that role of general's wife.
And it's new for Othello as well to go. Wow, this is odd, but this is working. This works. You know, it's kind of like Obama and Michelle Obama. It's just like what a you know.
Right.
It could be beautiful.
Yeah.
It's John Lennon and Yoko Ono.
Anyway, unfortunately, we're out of time. It's 12 o'clock and we need to leave to let the show happen. But thank everybody and thank you to our wonderful speakers.